The Dallas Cowboys have a new defensive coordinator in Christian Parker. We'll tell you the players that are going to benefit the most from this hire next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Markquese Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to cover a variety of topics, including Mike McCarthy being hired in Pittsburgh and how that could impact the Cowboys. We're going to talk about some more coaching changes that could happen. But Landon, I want to start with this. We've had some time to now reflect on the Christian Parker hire as the Cowboys' new defensive coordinator. You and I have been doing a bunch of research trying to figure out what his defense might look like. I wanted to go through some players that you think fit well and maybe don't fit well with Parker. And again, a lot of this is guessing or educated guessing. But give us some names of some players that you think will benefit from the scheme change.
Well, first of all, I think the cornerbacks just in general, because simply you're going to be getting a level of instruction and opportunity that I just don't feel like you were getting previously under Eberflus. That seems to be the calling card. I mean, we, to be fair, we said that about the linebackers in Eberflus last year, and we didn't necessarily get that. But
Fair.
I do feel like that there is a level of competency and detail and teaching that is being projected by the Parker hire that you feel like you're going to get out of these plays. And I think that was part of the appeal, honestly, for the Joneses and for McClay and for Schottenheimer, was that they felt like, hey, we're getting an extremely good teacher of coverages and defensive backs. So I think we can talk about them individually because I think it's for each one of them, it's different. But
Can I ask you about
Shavon
Revel? Because I think that's the one that I'm the most curious about, because this is a very gifted corner. He's really a man-to-man corner. Do you think he's going to fit well into a defense that uses a lot of cover 6 and even some cover 8?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do, because I think that it's not hard to learn those coverages. I think having to learn zone coverage is something that's it's usually the other way around, right? Like, it's usually you're coming out of college and you have a lot of experience with a lot of different zone stuff, and you don't have a lot of pure man coverage. And for Revel, he comes in kind of the opposite. So I do think kind of learning those coverages, and especially since if you kind of dig through some of the coverage stuff, if it's going to translate from Fangio to this system, it's a lot of rules that can turn zone into man coverage, right? Depending on what the routes are. So I think, ultimately there may be a little bit of a learning curve here, but I don't think that this player is a mismatch for the system necessarily. And if anything, like I said, I think it's probably harder to come out of college having learned a lot of zone and then try to keep up with NFL wide receivers in man coverage while learning the nuances of it than understanding the nuances of man coverage coming into the NFL and then being taught kind of the ins and outs of zone.
Now, what about Kalen Carson? Because this is somebody who has been in 2 different schemes already, one with Mike Zimmer and then last year with Matt Eberflus. He's on his 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years. What are the expectations here?
I mean, expectations is tough, but I think as far as where he fits in here, I think he's a pretty decent fit, right? I kind of view Carson, his strength or his aggressiveness and his intelligence. I think that this is a guy that will probably pick up the playbook pretty quickly and understand what's being asked of him, at least. And this is one of the things we talked about with this kind of system, is that if you can understand the playbook and understand what's being asked and then just be in the right position, if you play with the level of physicality and aggressiveness, you're going to succeed. And I think that Carson is one of these guys whose floor will be raised by this system. So even more than Revel, I feel like Carson is a guy who may benefit from this just simply because he had so much further to fall in this situation. I think Revel is a guy that they were going to try to make work no matter what, because they feel confident about his skill set. I think for a guy like Carson, who may have been borderline depending on who the defensive coordinator is, this is a step in the right direction for him, because I think his natural skill set can fit into what they're looking for.
Just really quickly, I've been doing some mock drafts, and every time you do a mock and you draft like a corner in the first round, you just instantly feel so much better about this defense, right?
Yeah.
Like if Bland can get back to being healthy, you've got a first round corner, and then you're just relying on Revel, Carson to be the third and fourth guys. It's wild how much that unit changes. And I've got to believe, Landon, they're going to go out and get a veteran corner. I've got to believe that Parker is going to find somebody who is a smart, heady player to come in and give you at least a floor at this position.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you're hoping, right? Is that it's the coverage scheme that's a greater than the sum of its parts, by kind of being tied together by scheme, and just having guys that, again, like I think it's more important to just have a good group of solid tackling, heady corners who at least know where they're supposed to be. They don't need to do a lot to be extra necessarily. They're going to let the kind of disguise that's happening in the coverage and what's happening up front do the work for them, and then just be where they need to be and make the plays as they arrive to them, as less so than like guys that have to be up in your face man coverage. You have to be on their P's and Q's. It's all or nothing. And if you lose, then you give up a touchdown. If you win, you get an interception, right? I think for guys that we have on this roster, being in a situation where they have options, they have help, they have answers, they understand their assignment specifically because they've been taught it very clearly, based, sometimes down to the route on how they're supposed to react to this situation. I think that will help a lot of these guys play faster because the decisions are being made for them. And it's just like a decision tree that they can pull triggers on once they see what's happening in front of them.
I want to ask you at safety, we're going to talk about the defensive line in a little bit, but you have Donovan Wilson, who is unrestricted free agent. I would be surprised if he's back. Malik Hooker has one more year on his deal. He also has a very cuttable contract. We've also heard from our guy Cody Alexander at matchquarters.com about how he thinks Markquese Bell could be a really good fit with Parker. What do you envision the safeties looking like with the new defensive coordinator?
Well, I think Markquese Bell, it's going to be interesting to see how they view Markquese Bell, right? Like, I think what Cody was trying to suggest was, what if Markquese Bell plays some nickel corner for you? And I think that makes some sense if you're going to be doing some shallow zone stuff, some cover 4 stuff, which cover 4 obviously means also cover 6 and cover 8, depending on what side of the passing strength you're on.
And hold on real quick, just to clarify nickel corner, because I think some people think, okay, he can't be Jordan Lewis. But I think maybe what you're saying is more like what we witnessed on Sunday, which was like Nick Imawari, the Seahawks safety, playing in the slot, rerouting slot guys, blitzing, stopping the run that way.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think more and more as they start playing these kind of coverages, these complex coverages. You're not necessarily asking your slot corner as much as you would, like, say, Jordan Lewis, for instance, to play, man coverage, man everywhere the guy goes, with allowing him a two-way go and having to play with these elite athletes in the slot where they have even more options to run these routes. No, you're playing the coverage you're dropping into a hook zone, you're dropping into a cover 4 zone, or maybe in certain spots you're dropping all the way back into the deep zone, depending on what it is. You're not necessarily having to man up with an elite athlete like CeeDee Lamb, snap in and snap out. And so I think you can play guys like you saw with Seattle, right, with Imawari, and then I think you have a chance to play Bell a little bit more in the slot if you want to. He can add a little bit more of a physical presence, and that's how you have these teams like Seattle who are able to play nickel versus more base coverages. As offenses start to play more 12 and 13 personnel, they're trying to get your defense into certain personnel so they can take advantage of that and throw the football. But if you able to play nickel, you're able to play with a big nickel. You can play that way against these kind of 12 and 13 personnel because you have a guy who is big enough to handle responsibilities and be a force in the run game as well.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to clarify that a little bit because I do think you're seeing some changes. Even someone like Buffalo, they've got DaRon Johnson, who isn't your typical slot corner. He's a bigger guy that can make plays in the run game, can fill gaps, in run fits. I think we're changing what we're looking for in these nickel defenders. And maybe honestly, that's the best way to put it. And we should mention really quickly, I think Wanye Thomas, who has even more experience than Markquese Bell playing in the slot, could be another option there as well. Lane, I want to talk about the defensive line. I also want to talk about some players who might not be strong fits with Christian Parker. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it feels good to be right. With football season coming down to the final game, now is the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build lineups around player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. Prize Picks is incredibly easy to get started. All you have to do is pick 2 or more players and choose more or less on their projections. So go download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I've always known the game, but I've never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. But now that I can actually take part of it live, it's in a market powered by the people. It's so much better. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trades involve significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you're not part of the Everydayer Club, you're missing out. You get ad-free episodes of this podcast for just $5 a month. Go to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Landon, I know you had a quick note on the defensive backs. Why don't you get into that?
Yeah, just real quick. I think the one guy that really doesn't stand to be beneficial for this changeover is Donovan Wilson. Yeah. He's very specifically a box safety and it doesn't have kind of the versatility. I think the versatility of guys like Elijah Clark and Wanye Thomas and even Malik Hooker, to be honest, I think that opens them up for a lot of opportunity. But I think this may signal the end of Donovan Wilson with the Cowboys.
I think it was probably over regardless of who the defensive coordinator was, but I certainly agree. So. Yeah. Let's talk about the defensive line. Is there anybody that really, really benefits from part? Because I think Quinnen Williams is going to be good in any scheme that you put him in. He's that type of player. But is there anybody else that really stands out here?
Well, I just think that the quality of your defensive line, I think, has improved now because if you're going to play, some of these tight and mid front, these 3-man fronts, it first of all, it really fits the kind of structure and build of what you currently have on your roster, right? I mean, you've got Oza and you've got a very strong kind of starting three that can kind of go out there and play that stuff if you need them to. With Solomon Thomas and Perion Winfrey and Toya, like, kind of all playing their roles behind them, and then the opportunity to go out and get more. I just think that before you had kind of almost a problem, right? Like when you were stuck to just playing a lot of 4-3 kind of looks. I mean, they were mixing it up because they felt like they had to, but they didn't ultimately have the structure to kind of support a lot of the body types that they had last season. I think this year, with this playbook, you do. So just having the opportunity to have more in your playbook where you're going to get to see those three guys potentially on the field a lot more, I think that automatically kind of raises the floor on things. And then on top of that, the body type that's kind of required on the outside as pass rushers gets opened up a lot more, right? Like if you're not running, having to run like more traditional kind of 4-3 structures where you need a power side, strong side defensive end specifically, it means that you can go into the draft looking for an edge player that might, that could fit kind of, especially the body types that you look and see that are coming out of the draft. You can go out and get another, if you needed to, 6'2", 250 instead of a 6'6", 265 or 270 pound guy. So yeah, I think that it just kind of helped put a lot of clarity on your defensive line, and maybe people didn't like win or lose jobs with this hiring, but it certainly made the Cowboys defensive line room look and make a lot more sense as a roster construction sort of exercise.
And I guess I look at it like he's had Nolan Smith, the last 2 years in Philadelphia, and that's a 6'2", 240 pound edge. He was also in Denver as the defensive backs coach there when they drafted Nick Benito, and Nick Benito had some awesome seasons. And that's another 6'2", 245 pound edge, right? Like he again, I know he wasn't necessarily coaching those guys or drafting them, but at least he's had experience with those guys being, in front of him. I think the thing that's most curious to me is, do we see the front office shift how they're valuing some of these undersized edges? We did see it last year with Donovan Ezraku, who is 240 pounds. Will that trend continue? We'll see.
Well, I mean, those guys, I mean, if they're going to run something close to what we've seen in like I said, in these sort of the tree that we know Parker comes from, then they're going to need to be kind of more linebacker, outside linebacker pass rusher types, because they will be doing some dropping because there's a lot more sim pressures that are going to be happening, interesting blitz stuff. So yeah, they're going to need to be more than just, straightforward, move forward pass rushers.
I don't think you're looking for the 6'5", 275 pound guy that's your base end anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're looking for guys who are more athletic and the reason you can get away with that is because you're going to be playing with three different guys between the offensive tackles that each weigh more than 285 pounds. So that's how you can get away with playing with 9 techniques that are 250 pounds, right? Even in the run game, if you need them to.
And we should mention the Cowboys are interviewing other defensive line coaches, including Marcus Dixon, who was last year with the Minnesota Vikings. We'll keep an eye on that. I know Aaron Whitecotton would like to have this job back. He has some experience, obviously, coaching 5-man fronts from his time this year with the Cowboys. He also did it with the Jets in 2024. Do you think this hire makes it more likely that Kenny Clark returns in 2026?
Yeah, I do. I mean, yeah, because I think you're going to need these bodies, right? You're going to need these body types, and if you could, and if he likes working here, and you could figure out a way to do it, like having these 3 kind of guys as your 3 interior defensive line. I mean, that's a start, buddy. Like that's how you get to at least that's a good kickoff at the very least, I would think. So
think about the year that Philadelphia won the Super Bowl with Christian Parker as a passing game coordinator. They had Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams. And they found ways to get all 3 of those guys on the field. They found ways to keep all those guys fresh. Again, he's not going to be Vic Fangio 2.0, but having some experience with 3 awesome defensive tackles and how to rotate those guys and use all 3 together, I think he can figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing is that you've got all 3 of these guys are kind of versatile players too. And anyways, I think really Osa is the only one that you would really kind of be, because of his size, that you'd be kind of careful with where you would maybe line him up. But honestly, I mean, in passing situations, you could certainly put him as a shade 0 if you needed him to. And again, let me be clear. Like, I'm talking like this is like, I mean, that's the only front that we're going to face. The truth of the matter is that this team is going to which is much different than last year. Really, they're going to be showing a lot of different fronts, in a lot of different ways. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for all these interior guys. But I just think that there's going to be more opportunity and better opportunity and more depth in the playbook for all three of these guys to be on the field at the same time.
Any linebackers that stand out as good or bad fits either way?
I think it helps Leofau some, because I do think that the one thing I feel like he can do is kind of move forward, and he's good blitzer, and he is a good closer at times. So, I mean, I think it can help him a little bit. I mean, again, you still feel like that's a position that is just going to need a lot of work for Overshown. Mm-hmm. He's kind of, scheme agnostic, it feels like. But I do feel like, again, having 3 280-pound plus defensive linemen between the tackles is going to help him get to the football and occupy offensive linemen in the middle. So I think that'll be beneficial for him. But I don't know that anyone necessarily stands out as, benefiting a ton. Not just because they're not specifically, specific body types, like they're very generic body types.
Yeah, maybe James a little bit more, just because I feel better about him in coverage than Leofau. But again, it's not strong enough either way, where we think, okay, now this guy is unplayable, or hey, this bench guy is now a locked in guaranteed starter. I don't think it's anything like that. I think they're going to explore free agency. Maybe someone like Nakobe Dean, who has familiarity with Parker, could be an option. And I certainly expect them to target a linebacker early in the draft. We'll see how it plays out. Go ahead.
Last thing, I think the Zimmer guys are going to have a better time than they did in the last administration, just because I think they're going to be closer to what their scheme is, even if it's not a 1-for-1 by any stretch. I think it's going to be closer to what they were used to and what they probably got drafted for. So that's probably going to help them.
All right, let's talk about Mike McCarthy being hired in Pittsburgh and how that could impact the Cowboys in 2026. We'll tell you why next. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I know that if I ever needed to hire someone for the show, I'm not replacing Landon, but if I ever needed to, I would go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I needed, real experience, and not just some resume buzzwords. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. One of the most shocking things I've seen in a long time happened on Saturday afternoon. I was watching ESPN just without my phone, and I saw the little ticker come up, and it said that the Steelers are hiring Mike McCarthy, and I screamed. I was so shocked. How do you think this could impact the Cowboys in 2026? Could you see guys like Lunda Wells, who thrived under McCarthy, maybe getting poached? Do you think he's going to target some players at the bottom of this roster? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think coaches that have been here for a little bit are certainly guys that will be consideration. Lunda Wells, obviously. Shimko is another one I think that could potentially wait. Is Shimko? Yeah. So I think he, as any coach that coached under McCarthy, I think is someone that will probably get a look-see. and at the very least, maybe do a pay raise with the Cowboys at this point because of that. So we'll see if that gets at least leverage to a little bit more cash for some of these guys. Yeah, and then I think, when this kind of thing happens, at least I know, being on the other side of it, you kind of just start looking at the fringe of the roster a little bit, and start to see guys that like maybe had some success under McCarthy, or that you felt like maybe were specifically McCarthy guys, and see if maybe those are guys that end up getting poached. I know I see a couple different guys that to me kind of line up there. I mean, everyone's going to need offensive linemen, right? We talked about both Bass and Hoffman being free agents this year. I mean, they both have kind of designations on them, but that doesn't mean that McCarthy wouldn't necessarily, like, if the Cowboys under tenderize either one of those guys.
Well, we talked about this before. Pittsburgh's got Isaac Seumalo, who's a free agent at guard. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Pittsburgh sign TJ Bass to an offer sheet. Maybe they wouldn't give the Cowboys the second round pick on the tender, but you can negotiate that. Maybe the Cowboys say, hey, give us a fourth round pick or a fifth round pick, and we can debate whether Dallas should do that or not. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Pittsburgh be interested in those guys. And I'll give you another one. What about someone like Luke Schoonmaker, who was here when the Cowboys drafted him? It's clearly not worked out so far. He's got 1 year left on his deal. I know Pittsburgh has a lot of tight ends, but I think Schoonmaker is somebody that Pittsburgh could grab for a 6th, 7th round pick, and he could get a start elsewhere.
Yeah, because it really feels like the Cowboys would like to start Brevin Spanford or play Brevin Spanford more. So I feels like Schoonmaker's role has kind of been diminished. And honestly,
he's not going to be back in 2027 anyway. So it's like you might as well just start on drafting a day 3 guy and developing him.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a good class, right? So maybe you could get a quality guy down the road that you can develop a little bit, and maybe even give an opportunity at some point later in the season. But yeah, I think the guys like that. I think another guy that this is he's on a cheaper deal, but we're just talking about names necessarily, not their stature. Malik Davis, right? Malik Davis is a guy that at different points shined under McCarthy, and I think McCarthy was hesitant, if I remember, to go with Rico Dowdle because I think he liked Malik Davis so much. What does Malik Davis do this last year? He comes in a relief role and does a really good job. If the Cowboys don't necessarily go out and sign him to a longer deal, I wouldn't be shocked if he came in and tried to swoop in and get him. So it's just guys like that like were on the, like I said, not superstars. He's not coming in here and getting Tyler Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like those guys aren't available. So I think it's going to be guys that he's familiar with, that he can bring in because he's just trying to kind of create a culture of guys at this new building.
Speaking of not superstars, what about someone like Hunter Lipke?
No, absolutely not.
Untradeable.
I thought you were speaking about someone who wasn't a superstar, Marcus.
I'm just saying that guy had like 4 touches until week 17. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike McCarthy wants to get an old school fullback for his new Pittsburgh job.
Week 17, you mean like right before the important part of the season starts?
Not for Dallas.
Not for Dallas, just because Dallas isn't ready and Lipke's already in the playoffs on his mind.
Fair. One more name, Jalen Tolbert. I know he's a free agent, but that seems like the perfect guy for Pittsburgh to sign. They need wide receiver help. He actually had his best season under Mike McCarthy. Feels like a guy that could kind of play in the slot, play on the outside with DK Metcalf. Cooper Rush, another guy to watch out for. So we'll see if the Cowboys and Steelers make any more trades. The one that they made last year was pretty fun. I think I'd do that one again.
I would do
We'll see if there's any action there. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you get all of the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen to Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.